I'm Scott Beasley, your chair of the Nevada County Coalition of Firewise Communities, and I welcome you all to our monthly meeting today, August 4th. As usual, we have a relatively full lineup of speakers and events, so we're going to get right into our agenda here. We're going to start with our reminders, code red, and the usual. I'm going to ask you all, if you're not using your phone to view this meeting, so if you're like on a laptop or you have it on your Apple TV or whatever, if you could go grab your phone. I have an ask of you all in about a minute here, so that'll come with our reminders. So go grab that smartphone of yours. We'll have our monthly resource spotlight, as always, shared by steering committee member Susan Rogers. She's going to discuss important documents you will need, kind of playing off on our theme from last month in terms of keeping those documents at ready so you can evacuate when the time comes. We have community partner reports from fire, law, OES, and others. And then we will get to our monthly education spotlight, which is focused on evacuation survivor stories. And those evacuation survivor stories are, again, just a continuation of last month. So if we have a whole bunch of you joining us new, and we appreciate you being here. I believe I saw on the signups 39 different Firewise communities represented. In addition, a whole bunch that are in process, so not yet certified. So thank you all for joining. Tonight's meeting was kind of the continuum of what we've been doing for some months now. We started with mitigation and preparedness techniques, talking about laws for clearing, suggestions for clearing, talking about how to ensure your home. We then transitioned into some early warning systems and some neighbors that are doing some really great things out there. That moved into some official warning systems, and last month's focus was evacuation, again, from kind of the who's who of our county. We heard from Chief Gamelgard, we heard from some individuals on the fire side and OES. This month and tonight, we are talking to a number of different survivors, people who have been forced to evacuate. And they're going to tell you what they did and what they might do if they got a do-over and had to evacuate again. So some really good lessons that you're going to hear directly from your neighbors and people who have lived it. And then with any luck, we'll have some time for a community forum. And then mark those calendars, especially those of you who are community leaders of your Firewise communities. On September 7th, we will have our annual education event that will allow you to check that box with NFPA. So with that, let's get into some of these reminders. And first, the mission. So again, a whole lot of new people here. The coalition promotes fire safety through advocacy, education, and community involvement with other stakeholders interested in working towards stronger fire safety practices. We are an unincorporated not-for-profit. We have no paid staff, no budget, no nothing. We're all just a bunch of your neighbors trying to do good and help out. And this monthly meeting is one way we do just that. So as we get into these reminders, this is why I ask you to pull your phone out. Now, we've been beating the drum on Code Red for long enough, and if you're part of this meeting, you probably already have signed up for Code Red. If you haven't, open up the camera on your smartphone and just go over that QR code. So I see Paulette, a bunch of people reaching for phones, love to see it. So that will take you to a link. If your default browser is like Safari on your iPhone, you can click right through to sign up for Code Red. For the vast majority of you, which have already signed up for Code Red, here's my ask. Just take a picture of that. And the next time you find yourself in a conversation where someone is talking about the dangers of fire, talking about preparing, talking about not being prepared, pull that out and ask them to do what I just asked you to do. So have them pull out their phone, and they can simply point their camera at that QR code on your phone in your camera roll, and it will open up a browser on their phone. So I'm gonna leave it up there for just a second. But so again, if you haven't signed up, that should open up a a link for you to register. And if you've already signed up, just literally take a picture of it, getting as close as you can, making that as big as possible on your camera roll. Second thing, bookmark the Ready Nevada County dashboard. Again, if you go to mynevadacounty.com and get to the dashboard under Ready, it is right there on the dash. I want to point out a couple things. So again, we have a QR code on the left there for Zone Haven, which if you don't grab it on 2 slides from now, it'll be there for you. And the other thing I wanted to point out is simply top right, some of these tabs, we all go directly to the landing page, but did you know there was an air quality map that you can get right from the dashboard? Smoke was moving in this afternoon, breeze picked up, it seemed to run away and go back north again. But if you're ever curious as to where to outrun the smoke, if you're looking to get away for the weekend and trying to decide between the coast, the bay, or I don't know, New York, you can pull this up and get that data. So another piece there. And then scout your route. So this is a great time of year to go find your exit routes away from your home so that when the lever gets pulled and you need to evacuate, you know exactly where you're going. So yeah, want to make sure that you're scouting that in advance so that when you're under duress, when you're stressed, you know exactly where you're going. I heard a rumor that Greenhorn Creek had great passage over the top of it. Do you have any officials here or just any dirt bikers from Friends of Banner Mountain? Jeff, what do you got for us?
Yes, Gail and I just drove it, I don't know, a month ago, and they have 3 culverts across it. So you can drive down Red Dog Road, cross the Greenhorn, and get over to the U-bed area. I would recommend 4-wheel drive. It's, you're in a creek bed down there. It's, we did it in a Dodge truck, so we had no problem at all. But you used to have to drive through the creek, but now there's 3 pretty big culverts and a big spread, so it's easy to get across it. So it gets that whole Banner Mountain area to the other side towards, U-Bet, Chalk Bluff, that whole area.
Let me just chime in on that if I could, Scott. This is Kristen with the U-Bet Firewise community. And if that's something that anyone is considering, it's imperative that then you also look at the routes out from U-Bet, because we are a 9-mile one-way in, one-way out road. So while the culverts are great, I just want to encourage everyone to say, okay, then what do I do once I get through that particular spot?
Good stuff. Thanks, Casey and Jeff. If you don't know what we're talking about and you live in Cascade Shores, down U-Bet, Manion Canyon, anywhere in that area, please pull up the map, take a look, and again, get on that 4-wheel drive vehicle and check it out. And then find your 5 emergency allies. So make sure that you have 5 people that you're in touch with, both in and out of the area, that act as your safety buddies and people that you can connect with in the event of emergency, and people that will connect with you to check in on you if they perceive that you are in an emergency. That booklet can be picked up anywhere that Jen and Paul and the crew are tabling, so coming to a local market near you. And then still got those phones? Great. So again, most of this group, I'm pretty sure, already is familiar with Zone Haven. You know exactly what zone you're in. If you don't, again, scan that QR code. If you already know what zone you're in, again, please just take a picture of that so that when you're talking to someone, you can pull that out on your phone and then spread the word and let them, again, just open up their camera and grab a picture of that within Zone Haven. So
these are evacuation zones. I think we need to make that clear. It's know your evacuation zone, right? We need to have that evacuation in there because that's what it is. That's what it's for.
Yeah. So little context, if you weren't at last couple meetings, this is what the county will be putting out. So when the evac orders come, we can tell you. I know I'm in 211. So when evac comes for zone G211, I know to hit the road. I can tell you I was at Plumas. They do not have Zone Haven. They do now. They did not at the start of the fire, and in Plumas County, it was not as organized, it was not as orderly as it could have been. So again, kudos to our partners at OES, the supervisors and others who will be flipping the bill for this in the future. We appreciate it. This is a great resource. So please know your evacuation zone. Get that up, get the note on your fridge, save it in as a note on your phone, whatever you got to do, so that when the code red comes or you're scanning social media for the different zones, you know exactly whether or not it's referring to you. So those are your reminders.
There was a code red issued for that Brunswick, Idaho, Maryland fire the other day. And the code red message had basically this is the evacuation zone it's getting an evacuation order. And they used the zone number. They did not say north of Idaho, Maryland, west of Brunswick or anything. They used the zone number for the code red, and that's why you need to know your zone. Thanks, Scott.
Good stuff. And Susan, on to you.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen here. And where is my?
I put my zone in my phone.
Absolutely. So resource of the month, if you go to your education resources page on our website, you look up and down here and you go to education resources, scroll down to the section, you and yours, and here's a brand new item right here. Important documents you will need. This is based on something from Valerie Bush, who is a member here. And it's a checklist of the important documents you need to have with you when evacuating, including some items that wildfire survivors said that they wish that they had with them. And we have it in both a PDF format, and it'll look like this. And it has little check boxes, so you can check it off once you put it into your evacuation. I like a binder. You know, you can put it in a folder, but man, I've got all my stuff in a 3-ring binder because you can also put pockets in that. So that's what it looks like. So you can get it either in PDF format, or you can download it in a Word doc format and customize it to your own needs, take off stuff that doesn't apply to you, or put in stuff that you want to add to it. And then the other last thing is there's a home inventory guide flip book right here from the California State Insurance Commissioner's Office. You have to print it out, you have to download it, you have to print it out on paper, and it's 44 pages. But if you're really, serious and nerdy about getting everything written down, it's got plate columns for putting the value of it, where you bought it, how long ago, and the whole thing. So that's another home inventory thing that you might want to do in addition to taking a video with your camera. So we did want to bring this one out because it's all the stuff that the survivors probably later on this evening are going to tell you, make sure you've got it with you. Back to you, Scott.
Cool. Thanks, Susan. Let's get on to our partner reports. Boy, is anyone from CAL FIRE not working 24-hour shifts right now? Do we have Jim or Matt?
Jim's here. Does that mean I'm not working?
Jim's on the line.
Yeah,
well,
I'm here.
Not working in harm's way.
That depends. Sometimes a public meeting can be in harm's way. You never know, being a public official. So I'm sorry I missed last month. I was a little busy last month. And so here I am. My good friend Bob used to kind of give me a hard time about starting off with a joke. So I laid off of that for a little bit. But Scott, I do have a question for you, though. I was wondering why you think I like elevator jokes so much.
I don't know, Jim. Why do you like elevator jokes so much?
They work on so many levels. Virginia, that you almost smiled. You almost smiled. Okay, thank you very much. They work on so many levels. Okay, elevators. Yeah, all right. Anyway, moving right along. Let's get to the serious stuff and what I'm going to talk about, just a few items here. Right now, what's going on with CAL FIRE? I think you alluded, you hit the nail right on the head there, Scott. We're a bunch of our stuff's out right now fighting fires. We are staffed with 22 engines. We still have 3 crews in the unit and 2 dozers, but we have 8 engines that are out. Everything's assigned to the Dixie fire that's out right now. We thought the Dixie fire was winding down a little bit, but it came back with some vengeance. So we have 8 engines out, 2 dozers, 2 hand crews, and just a whole bunch of overhead personnel doing various jobs. Our own Matt Wallen's doing branch 1 on that fire right now. So he's been very, very busy with that. So we do have a bunch of stuff out right now. Let me talk about the activity. The Dixie fire is an animal itself. So that one's going to town. You saw the Tamarack, that's calming down a little bit. And now we're starting to get the results of some of the lightning fires up north. And really the key factor is the wind, and I'll get to that in a minute. So comparing the Nevada Placer unit, so just our 3 counties, from, like I usually do, from 2020 at this time of the year to 2021, the synopsis is we're down 12 acres from last year. So that sounds really good in the Nevada Placer unit, but we're up 32 fires. So we've been catching them just barely, and a great result is what you saw yesterday. We've been working really hard and diligent to not only have our local governments fully staffed, but we've been keeping our 22 engines up, our dozers, our aircraft that are right there at the Grass Valley Air Attack Base. And if we didn't have those folks to box that fire in yesterday from the airport just being so close, I think it would have been a little bit more difficult. We also have a helicopter out of Auburn that we're staffing right now. So that's a great asset to us. Now, how does that look in compared to the rest of the state? We've been really lucky in the Nevada Placer unit. I certainly want to give credit to a lot of you folks, because I think a lot of you are getting the word out. And I don't think that word has gotten out to all the communities in the state of California. But let's compare where we're at in the entire state of California to last year. We are up 226 fires from this time last year in the state of California. And we are up, I hope you're sitting down for this, the number of acres we're up from last year is 172,482. So over 172,000 acres more than we were at this time last year is what our activity is so far. I think that you can probably surmise that the cause of that is all the dry vegetation that we have out there. Now, what we've been blessed with, it's a good thing and a bad thing, is that high pressure that's been sitting over us. The monsoonal moisture has kind of been pushed off to our east. And once again, like I told you before, monsoonal moisture is not a good moisture. It sounds like it's great. It sounds like it brings a bunch of rain, and sometimes it does. But most of the time, all it brings us is dry lightning in this area of California. So that's bad. But we've had this high pressure sitting over us. And that high pressure, the end result of that is hot temperatures, but it's also stagnant air. At some point, we're going to get into that mixing of the air and in some systems that are going to go over the top of us, whether it's thunderstorms with downdrafts or just our normal winds, or God forbid, our phone winds, those north winds that we hear about. So once we start to get any wind at all, we're going to see fires take off. Yesterday, we thought we had that Brunswick fire contained to one area, got just a little bit of wind hit on it, and it jumped right across Idaho, Maryland Road to the other side of it, and it was off the races to Grass Valley again. Luckily, we already had a dozer, a bunch of fire engines on it, and the aircraft right in the areas we were able to catch it. So I guess what I'm saying is now is not the time to go out and start doing your fuels reduction projects. We're past that time of the year where we recommend that, and it's just not safe to do that anymore, because any start is going to catch and probably burn faster and hotter than you can control. So what we're going to hear from later is people that have lived through this experience. So please heed their warnings, listen to what they have to say, and you would be at that ready and that go state. Keep your vehicles full of fuel. Know, like they just talked about, all the different ways out of the area. Be ready to go if you don't feel comfortable. Listen for the PG&E public safety power shutoffs. That should give you some other warnings that things are happening. So just watch out for all stuff like that. The last couple of things I want to talk about is AB 38. Did you guys get a chance to talk about that last month at all, Scott?
No.
Okay.
We did not.
Let me hit on AB 38, because if you're going to sell a house,
Jim, just briefly, Hey, Jim, I appreciate this. Just to kind of keep us on track, we got 15 minutes for 5 speakers. So if you could give us maybe cliff notes, and then I think we're going to do a deep dive into that later when there's time for clearing.
Well, let me just state it for if you live in an area of high risk or very high risk in the SRA, you're going to have to get a defensible space to sell your home. So we should do a deep dive into that some other day, but it started taking effect on July 1st. My last thing is that I'm going to do a shameless plug for the Town of Washington Volunteer Fire Department. On Saturday between 2 and 6, they have a barbecue chicken feed. It's their main fundraiser for that little fire department, and it supports that community very well. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Jim. And yeah, if any of you could take the trip out there, that'd be great. They run on a shoestring budget and would really appreciate any help y'all could go out and give.
Where is that, Scott?
Up next,
where is it?
Nevada County, Town of Washington.
Oh.
Little Town of Washington, yeah. Nevada County Consolidated Fire. Patrick, you with us?
Yes, I am. Good evening, Patrick Mason, Deputy Fire Marshal with Nevada County. Just in a real quick nutshell, to touch on what Chief Matthias mentioned about getting out there now doing your fuels reduction. For the Nevada County OES, the DSI inspectors, the 3 part-time inspectors, we've actually cut back their hours, so they're working 1 day a week, and then we still have the 1 full-time employee. And the reason we did that is because we want to save their hours. They're limited to 1,000 hours every fiscal year. So we really want to get out when we can be proactive and be removing that vegetation. So at this point, it's pretty much just a complaint-driven or complaint-based system right now, where we're not going to be out doing those proactive inspections. As for the local government, we have pretty much our resources back. We do have a few individuals out on overhead assignments. We have 1 engine out, OES engine, but beyond that, we have all of our engines back. And who knows how long that's going to be. They go out for 14 days. Usually they come back, switch out, and get called out pretty quick. But I just want to reassure everybody that when we are out there, before we send our apparatus, we do have the backfill figured out for the local stations. We won't send a piece of equipment out without being able to make sure that we cover our home stations first. So we are always covered here, and that just came to show, as Chief Matthias mentioned with Brunswick Road yesterday, everything's fully staffed. So with that, I'm going to turn it over and look forward to hear what the speakers have to say.
Thanks so much, Patrick. Appreciate you being on the call. Up next from Nevada County Office of Emergency Services, OES, Jen.
Hey, thanks so much for having us tonight. Looks like there's a lot of folks on the call today. So just to follow up with Chief Matthias's grim news about the drought and the fire season that we expect to have this year, Office of Emergency Services has been trying to be out in the community and make sure that folks are familiar with the tools that we have this year to help keep you informed of the fires in your area. So we are going to be doing a countywide code red emergency alert test on August 16th. A lot of folks are wondering, is my account active or is it working? I don't really get code reds very often, and that's because we use this tool very judiciously. We will only send a code red emergency alert if an area is under an evacuation warning or an evacuation order. So this will give you an opportunity on the 16th to know that your accounts are working and functional. And we do encourage you to, speak with your neighbors, friends, and family and make sure they're signed up as well. We are asking everyone to know their zone. So thanks for that plug, Scott, and letting folks know how to access that information. We have been at several community events like the Thursday Night Marcus in Grass Valley and the First Friday Art Walks in Nevada City. We will also be at the Nevada County Fair, so stop on by. And if you guys are going to be having any community meetings, we have handbooks, evacuation tags, know your zone fridge magnets, and a lot of outreach materials to help you keep your community informed. And you can stop by fire stations, the local libraries, the Rood Center, and also police stations if you're looking to pick up any of those materials, or you can also contact me and I can have those ready for you to pick up at the Rood Center. A couple other updates are We've been working with the Amateur Radio Emergency Services Group. We're working on an MOU just to build redundancy and resiliency for communications in Nevada County, especially when we have public safety power shutoffs or emergencies that cause our communications to go down. So we are working on that. And lastly, we have been partnering with the town of Truckee and the utility districts in Eastern Nevada County, because we do anticipate they will also have public safety power shutoffs this year. So we're just trying to ready the community and ready the businesses up there to be prepared for those power shutoffs later this year. And that'll wrap it up for my my presentation. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Jen. I know we had you double booked tonight, so I appreciate you taking a couple minutes to be here with us at the start of the meeting. Fire Safe Council of Nevada County, Pat or Jamie, who's driving?
Thank you, Scott. This is Pat speaking, and I just have a little bit of information to you for everyone. I have posted in the chat all of the action plans that are required to be updated by about 7 Firewise communities this year. And I won't take time to read it. I hope everybody will just double check and see if yours is there. My email is there as well. And as you know, we're working on the Alta Sierra, the Greater Alta Sierra division. The Alta Sierra Property Owners Association will be separated from the rest of Greater Alta Sierra, and all remaining neighborhoods, whether individuals or HOAs or road associations, will be formed into Firewise communities that make sense. So if you're a part of that, if I haven't reached out to you yet, you can reach out to me and we can get started. I look forward to meeting with everyone and helping them craft the best option for your neighborhood. And that's what I have tonight. I think Jamie also has something. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Just to touch base real quick. I wanted to offer some volunteer opportunities. We'll be out at the Nevada County Fair next week. So if there are any Firewise communities that are interested in coming out and utilizing our booth as a platform to message the community, you're welcome to contact the office. Email is best, info@rufiresafe.com. And we're happy to have our Firewise communities joining us in our messaging to the community next week. So that's about all I have. And it's nice seeing everybody.
Thanks, Jamie. Steve Eubanks from Friends of Banner Mountain Firewise Community has an event coming up. Steve, you want to throw out your call for support?
Actually, I'm not Friends of Banner Mountain, but that's a great group. I'm actually Squirrel Creek Ranches, but I'm talking on behalf of the Fire Safe Council. We are going to have a Red Zone affair on September 11th. That's a big fundraising event. Some of you may remember 2 years ago, we tried to have that and the weather didn't cooperate, and so it was canceled and we couldn't do it last year. But we are going to have it this year. It's an event that is being held cooperatively with the San Francisco 49ers alumni group. And so they will have a number of members of their alumni, the San Francisco 49ers football team, at the event. It's going to be held, there's actually 2 parts to it. There'll be a morning and noon and early afternoon part for donors, and an evening dinner with a band and dancing and drinks and cocktail hour, that kind of thing. We are going to have information about how to sign up for that there'll be a link on the Fire Safe Council website coming up within about a week. And what I'd like to ask is, we're looking for volunteers who will help with that event. It's going to be an all-day event, and it's going to have several shifts. Pat Leach will be coordinating with the Firewise communities to ask for volunteers, and she'll have a sign-up available. We have something like 30 slots available during the day, probably not all 30, wouldn't require exactly 30 people. I think some people are going to sign up for a couple of slots because they will be, not long slots. But we're asking for people to think about that. And one of the things, people who volunteer will get a free meal. And so you will have an opportunity to mingle a little bit with the San Francisco 49ers as well. So more information will be coming out again to Firewise communities via Pat Leach. And we'll have more information on the Fire Safe Council website within about a week. So, and actually, there will be information on there that you can contact me if you have any questions as well. And so we'd appreciate any assistance. And that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Good stuff. And if any of you are interested in volunteering, the email address info@areyoufire-safe is in the chat if you want to take a look there. Last community update, actually me wearing a different hat. Tomorrow night, so while we're begging for volunteers, there is an opportunity. We are trying to bring CalDART to KGU. I know I'm breaking my own rule on acronyms. CalDART is the California Disaster Airlift Response Team. KGU is the call sign of our local airport. So we have a couple of pilots who already fly CalDART, the Disaster Airlift Response Team, and we're trying to make an operations center. What CalDART does is bring pilots together in times of emergency. It formed in the aftermath of the Loma Prieta earthquake, where overland transport was basically shut down. Benefit to having this at the airport is that in the event of an emergency, whether that be a fire that shuts down traffic, into the north or south, it could be anything. Could be landslide, could be avalanche, anything. Or we just might need to transport supplies, i.e. medical goods from the strategic reserve or anything else, and get that into our community. These pilots can do that on a volunteer basis. So if you are an organizational minded person, if you have low grade OCD is a plus, if you've ever worked in these types of organizations where there is a very definitive FEMA-like org chart, it is a plus. Or if you just want to help out, we're looking for everyone. So my email address is in about a dozen places in the chat at this point, but it's whiteshirtbluesky@gmail.com. You need not be a pilot. I know nothing about flying planes. Again, just trying to, again, bring another level of safety and preparedness to our community. And we have the kickoff meeting is tomorrow night. So I know this is kind of quick, but reach out to me if you're interested. All right. So that's it with our community partner reports here. And we are on to our monthly education spotlight. I'm really excited about the people we have here. I will apologize in advance. We typically have, I've typically met in advance with all our speakers. We have their stories crafted. We've developed the high points and we bring them to you. I have also been deployed to Dixie Fire for the last week. So I just got back to my own bed and the smell of smoke out of my hair. So I apologize. I have not connected and curated these stories like we normally do, but I'm still convinced that these are some amazing speakers who have been through quite a lot and have some great lessons to learn. So from the Lobo Fire, we have Matt Hyatt, Jones Fire, Sue Hopkins, Campfire, Joanna Orazi, I pronounced that wrong, guaranteed. And then from both Campfire and now again on the doorstep of the Dixie Fire, Dr. Colleen Milligan. So excited to have all these people. So hey Matt, you out there? Can get you off mute.
Trying to do that. Cool.
Hey Matt,
hey,
thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, thanks for inviting me, Scott. This pretty much everybody's new to me here, so pleasure to meet you.
Yeah. So Matt, if you could just start off, I know you're sharing here. So, a couple years ago, if you could throw your story out, like, it's the middle of the night, you roll over in bed, and then I think you have hands down the most dramatic story that's worth telling.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll start off with the story, and then I've got a couple pictures, and then kind of some lessons learned at the end. I figured I would do that after you get a tour of my MTV Cribs house. So, yeah, Lobo fire started in my front yard, and on a transformer. We had built our house 360 days earlier and moved in. And so it was obviously, I think, October 8th. And my wife and I and our 1-year-old were well asleep. Well, no, everybody was asleep but me. And we were, you know, it was so windy. My house is all made out of corrugated metal siding, the majority of it. So like wind and acorns and flying things like that tend to be noisy in my house. So I just remember having a hard time sleeping. It was about 40 to 50 mile an hour gusts coming from the north. My house goes east to west. And the power went out. And in about maybe 2 to 3 minutes after the power went out, I noticed there were flames flying over my roof. More than embers, it was like long stretched out embers. And it seemed like a dream. I was kind of laying there, the power went out, I noticed my fan went off, and then I see flames blowing over my roof going over the Deer Creek Canyon. So I ran out on the north side in the hallway and looked, and there was probably 40, 50-foot flames going up the pine trees on both sides of my driveway. And I lost my voice, you know, and I started screaming, fire, you know, fire, and totally panicked and lost my cool. And, you know, my wife didn't even know what was going on, but the whole front yard was glowing and on fire. So, you know, I freaked out. I ran down the hallway. I was in my underwear, and I didn't even know if I should grab my shoes. And so we knew we had to leave. And luckily the county, when I built my house, they made me clear 10 feet on each side of the driveway. And my driveway is about 1/8 of a mile long for my private driveway. And I was worried the fire was right. I have about 4 acres fenced in with deer fence. And the fire was right at my gate, blowing towards my house. So maybe 200 feet away. And I was worried my whole escape route, I'm at the end of the road with a gate. So I was worried the whole 1/8 of a mile it was completely forest. And I was worried that I was going to drive through flames there. And it was marginal 50-50 whether or not we were going to live. So I tried leaving without my dogs. I had my kid in my arm. I busted out of the gate with my Jetta, smashed the gate open, and called 911 on the road. And luckily the fire was like 200 to 300 feet in diameter. So it wasn't that big. And I got down to the Grass Valley Group parking lot, 911 answered. And I remember them saying, yeah, there's 20 fires going on right now. It was the same night as the Santa Rosa fire. And they said, you know, we'll get there when we get there. So just long story short, we waited 20, 30 minutes. Some fire trucks came. I ran up my road and got some shoes and clothes and baby formula, car seat, water. We were not prepared. So we didn't have anything. And then, you know, the fire really didn't grow that much at that point. It was kind of dancing around in the north part of my yard. And lucky for us, PG&E dropped about 60 trees the year before and didn't clean them up in the forest. So it was burning those trees down that were laying there. A tree blew down and knocked a transformer, you know, started a fire that way. So basically we went to a hotel and wrote it out, and four of my neighbors, all 4 of their houses burned down. They built their homes in the 70s, and they had, you know, bushes and trees near their house, and there were, you know, shag carpets, and A-frame houses and whatever. That was one house. Another house was a little more contemporary, I guess. But they, you know, the fire came back, the wind changed, and you know, we actually, my one neighbor, he's probably 85. He, the one neighbor got him out and got him, you know, got him out to evacuate. He hung out somewhere for an hour. The fire trucks came, the wind changed. He thought everything was fine, and he went back to his house and went back to sleep. And then the winds came and started burning his deck down. And his little Chihuahua Barney woke him up, and he hightailed out of there in his IROC Camaro and barely made it out of there while his deck was burning. So his house and the other guy's house and the other guy next to me all lost their houses. So that's probably it for the time we have for the story, maybe, Scott? I think, yeah. I mean,
yeah, I think there's already some good lessons in there. I'm taking notes, but yeah, if you want to move on, maybe show some of the slides of your fortress and some of the lessons you learned.
Yeah, cool. Let me get in the presentation mode here. Okay, sorry, I just kind of hacked this together here today. So this is pictures of everything I took today. And it pretty much looks like the way my property did during the fire. So nothing's changed, except the garage wasn't here. This is kind of bad formatting here. I'm standing on my roof. These are videos, okay? So I'm gonna do the left video here. So this is looking to the east. The fire started, I'll show you where the fire started, but so this is my front yard. It's nice and bare, and this is all dirt. And you can kind of see here that I've nicely pruned my trees up about 15 feet, and the fire totally was, you know, halfway canopied in the forest down here. I'll show you where it was. There's my gate. So the fire started right on the other side of that gate, and these two pine trees over here, the flames were up here, and actually I had a shipping container right here too. And I forgot to mention it, but my shipping container burned, and all the contents burned down, and I lost, you know, everything I owned was in the shipping container. So what I learned was there's forklift holes on shipping containers, and they sit on they were just, this is all dirt because they had to excavate. FEMA excavated the shipping container out because there was a lot of hazardous materials in there. So it's kind of, I haven't really planted seed there, but it was more like this kind of dead grass that I weed whack in May underneath the shipping container, and the grass burned and went on through the forklift holes and burned the wood floor of the shipping container. So, you know, I had $200,000 of contents in there. So that kind of sucked. So, but anyway, when the fire came down out of the trees, hit my dead grass. So for some perspective, these pine needles down here on the ground, this fire was about knee high. And it wasn't everywhere, but it was 30% of this would be knee high flames blowing right at my house. As soon as it hit my irrigated grass here, this is actually yarrow. My whole yard is yarrow. It just completely died, the fire. So it went from trees to knee high to zero. So here's looking to the north where the fire started. Now, I just built my garage here a couple months ago. I'm moving on to landscaping this year. So that's kind of why this is so sparse. But you can see that I basically am scared to plant anything tall or bushy or anything near my house. So this is metal. My soffits are hardy cement. My roofing is metal. I have no vents anywhere on my soffits. So I have a non-vented roof system here, which is a big risk for having embers blow in your soffits and going in your attic. So that's one way on my house. And here's kind of the back side of my house. So green grass, nothing growing, gophers, fence. So I always thought the fire, this is Deer Creek down here. Right there, and Wildwood is over here. And so I always thought the fire was going to come up this canyon and burn these trees and come that way. So I cleared all the way down to here when I built my house and put this fence in here. And I mow with a mower on the other side of this fence, 20, 30 feet. So I've got 150 feet, and this is the closest kind of risk to me right here. This is probably more like about 150 feet, and there's some bushes right there. My neighbors got some property over there, so that's why I left it. So, and here's my patio. So those are two videos. Here's what the back of my house looks like. So standing on my roof, right? My house is, there's metal. This is south facing, so I didn't want to have to stain wood every year, but I've got a big concrete patio here. These are kind of risky. We just put these in recently, these shade cloths. I mean, they're made out of plastic, but we had to we couldn't use our patio, so because the heat was too bad. But this is kind of some perspective.
Hey, Matt.
Yeah.
Hey, Matt, if I could cut in real quick. I appreciate this. We might need to speed up a smidge, but I wanted to point out just how little it takes close to your house to put things at risk. In that last picture, there's a log in the back right, and it's like right over the top of that deck chair on the right with the wooden backing. And I was working traffic control at the bottom of his road later on in that incident, and I may or may not have snuck in past the fire line to help Matt out and check on his house, and just that one single log that was left for ornamental purposes was on fire. And every time the wind picked up, it was kind of blasting the side of his house. So, a couple lessons there are: one, that's great, and it's fine when you have a metal sided house, but even something as simple as just an ornamental log a few feet off of your off of your otherwise perfectly stone non-combustible patio can be a risk. So yeah, I'll leave it at that and not share exactly what fluids were used to put that fire out.
So firefighter, this was the closest the fire got, where my grass is only 10 feet wide here. They told me my siding would probably flash the heat. The siding probably got 300 degrees for about 10 seconds. Because this was all burning, because this is non-irrigated. I didn't get the pictures in. Okay. Yeah. So basically, I check my soffits, and I check my gutters for leaves, metal roofing. We now started keeping our garage door shut at night, right, in case there's embers blown in, and I don't want any of my garage door windows are all shut in my garage. There's no firewood near my house. I keep my firewood pile 500 feet from my house. If I don't finish using my firewood in March, I run it back. I don't, besides my cushions, I try to not keep flammables on my patio. I've got a little 1,500 gallon water storage. I'm going to add 5,000 gallons with I've got a house generator now that I couldn't run my sprinklers or any power, any water. We're a little nervous. We've got like locks on our gate that are powered with electronic solenoids, and so we've got keys all over in our cars and everything. So if there's no power, even the generator doesn't work, we can still get out. We've now made our go bags here. I don't keep a chainsaw in my go bag, but I'll know exactly how I'm going to get it in my truck when I leave. We have respirators in our. I've priced out getting a simple scuba tank to have oxygen in a car if we're stuck in a car traffic jam. We keep headlights in our go bag. Know where your fire stations are, where the hydrants are. I probably was trying to write something for fire. Oh, the code red thing. I add the code red as a contact on our phone and put it when I put my phone on airplane mode, but my wife has it on do not disturb. And if you have them as a favorite for Code Red, then the message will, get through to you. That's what I got.
That's good stuff, Matt.
Cool.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. And in our conversations about this event, there were a couple other things that came out. You had mentioned to me that like when the smoke is blowing and everything's going, like a little flashlight, like the flashlight on your phone is not sufficient. So I can tell you that I have a full 3-cell mag light next to my nightstand because of advice you gave. And then you breezed over something pretty quick. But you said you almost made a break for it without the dog, like it was happening that fast. I think that serves as a great reminder that we all need a plan for our animals. You're talking about a dog in a situation. So for those that have, livestock, horses, many animals that don't come running immediately when you call them, I think it's just a great reminder that you need to have carriers and whatever else is needed ready to go, during fire season.
Yeah, my dog was hiding.
And then, what's that?
My dog was hiding.
Yeah.
That's how bad it was.
Yeah, I imagine. Now, you during the insurance claim process, you had to make multiple claims, as I understand it. Is that accurate? Because it's just hard to remember.
Yeah.
Everything you have?
It was a few rounds with the insurance company. I think they basically said, submit what you know, and then you can come back and do it again. And one of the things that I learned was, I had everything. My life was in my shipping container, and all I needed to do was take a 5-second video so I could remember what was on what shelves in there. And since I didn't do that, I had to basically just remember, and it took me over 2 months. My supplemental claim was larger than my original because I forgot so many things that were in there. And so luckily, I don't know, my insurance company didn't require receipts. They said they needed receipts for anything over $400. And I had, 50 that were over $1,000 or something. And they didn't ask for any receipts. So I really lucked out. I was scared about it. Yeah. So take a video of your stuff, as a way to.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Matt, really appreciate you being on here tonight and sharing your story. I think there might be some questions later if you're able to stick around. If not, we totally understand. We are going to move on to our next speaker. So again, that was our Lobo fire here. You've got, as Matt alluded to, you've got Wildwood to the west, southwest of his house. And again, right off of Bitney Springs. Our next speaker is, unfortunately, right down the road from the Jones fire, which was last year. So you've got Newtown and Empress where Bitney meets here, and then coming all the way over and touching in on Highway 49 as you head up to the ridge, we've got the Jones fire. So let's see here. So do we have Sue Hopkins with us? Sue, if you're with us, I believe you are on mute.
You asking for Susan?
Yes.
Okay. My internet's very unstable, so.
Fair enough. Hopefully we got audio here.
You were cut off. So what would you like to know? Because certainly Matt's story is utterly amazing, and I don't know that, I certainly don't have a story like that.
Well, you are alive here tonight to share your story. So that tells me you did something right. So I'm wondering are there just a couple of, do you have maybe 2 things to share from your experience at Jones last year that you felt went really well, and maybe perhaps 2 that did not go as well that you'd maybe like to get a do-over on?
Good questions. One of the things I think I did really well was as soon as the code red call came in, I was practically out of the house. I threw on clothes. I didn't even brush my teeth. And in 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, I had grabbed the computer, the cell phone, and was out the door. And that I did really well because I was headed up Highway 49 to Sierra City. I knew exactly where I was going to go. And I was blessed that I could do that. Highway 49, of course, was shut down later. And the fact that I got out immediately was a blessing. I think that's the thing I did best in the moment. I would also say that we had done an awful lot to prepare the house. The house was built out of hardy plank siding, has a metal roof. We had in the few months before the fire put in a 5,000-gallon water tank. We had gotten rid of all of the beautiful wooden lattice and put in metal pool fencing. We had done gravel surrounds around the entire house. We had gotten the foundation vents that when their embers come by, the paint, the special paint on them swells up and keeps the embers out of the foundation. So we had done all of those things in addition to years of defensible space work. So we have an arborist who comes out every 3 or 4 months. Now he comes out every month, continuous work on the property. And so I think we were probably as well prepared as we knew how to be for this, which really helped the firefighters because they came in and built a road behind the house and sprayed the retardant all along that. And we are now in the process of taking that road and making it into a walking trail. So find an opportunity where you can. So those are the things we did really well, I believe. As far as what would I do differently, I think I would like to be more in touch with neighbors if I possibly can figure out how to do that easily. It's not that easy when you have to evacuate immediately. How do you really do that? From our area, we only have one way out. That's a big concern, which I keep bringing up. And so those are the two things that I would like to do better in the future, would be to be better in touch with neighbors and see if we can't figure out how to get that secondary egress out from the Woolman area.
Great stuff, Susan. Appreciate you sharing.
Of course, happy to do so.
Anything else you'd like to add?
Not that I think of at the moment. Thank you.
Yeah, again, thanks so much for sharing your story. We're glad that it worked out well for you, and we know there's some progress being made in that area for clearing, and hopefully there is more to come on that. So Susan Hopkins, again, thanks for sharing your story there. Up next, we have a speaker from Campfire. Joanne is with us. Campfire, I'm pretty sure everyone knows the story, but moving all the way up here, sadly, our fire map is so crowded. It's hard to point stuff out, but we've got point of reference here, Oroville right here, and then the Campfire representing this area here. Paradise, you'll hear Paradise and Magalia in these stories, and that is the current, that is this outside map here, Paradise, Concao, Magalia, and that Campfire. So Joanne, thanks for joining us. We appreciate you being here. Oop, Joanne, you are muted.
Can you hear me now?
Loud and clear.
Oh,
Oh, you just muted yourself again.
okay. How about
Okay,
now?
You're there. Don't touch anything.
Okay.
Don't touch anything. You're perfect. You're perfect.
Okay. Oh, thank you for having me. Yeah, I guess I'll start with the morning of the fire. It was at 7:30 in the morning. My husband was leaving to go over. He was managing some storage units, and he left to go across town to go open them up. And then on the way back, he noticed that the sky was red, and it was kind of a familiar scene that we've had in the past. And when he got home, he said, the sky doesn't really look very good. It looks like there might be some smoke. And I said, well, why don't you run down to your mom's and get some of her photo albums just in case, and we'll keep them up here at our house. His mom was in assisted living, so not living in the home. And it was about less than 3 miles from our house. So he went down and grabbed the photo albums. We had family visiting and they were all looking at them. So we knew exactly where they were. So on his way back, he had to pass Feather River Hospital. And when he got home, he said it looked like they were starting to evacuate. And he said, I think we need to leave. And this had happened to us before. We'd had to evacuate before, and we were only gone for like maybe a couple hours or so. And in the past, we had an emergency vehicle come down our court and tell us to evacuate, or a siren or a telephone call. And so this time there was nothing. So I took it seriously, but probably not as seriously as I should have. I was waiting for some kind of a notice like we'd had in the past. But I did start gathering some items. We didn't have a to-go bag. I started filling one up. And meanwhile, a friend of mine called, which was odd because usually we text each other. And she said, you need to get out. You need to get out. You have to evacuate. You need to go now. So I stopped and called Atria, which is where my mother-in-law was. And I said, are you evacuating? And they said, no, we haven't heard anything about it. And I said, well, if she asked, we're coming to get her. So we did have a briefcase full of important papers together that we had already done. So we gathered that, and my husband's a musician and collects vintage instruments. So I said, grab a couple of guitars. He was just ready to go. He was panicking and said, let's go, let's go, let's go. And I was really not taking my time, but not rushing as much as I should have. And then I asked him to grab some of our photo albums. So we decided to take 2 cars because he was going to go get his mom and I was going to go to Chico, and we were going to meet at Rayleigh's. So as we were leaving the house, the power went out and our cars were in the garage. So he had to manually open up the garage door, and Paradise is pitch black anyway. So, it was very, very dark, like it was night, even though it was morning. So we were able to get our cars out, and we lived at the end of a court. So as we were leaving, we only had to go past 3 homes to get to the end of our court. And when we got to the end to get on Pence Road, which is one of the main roads out, we sat there for 20 to 30 minutes because there were already all these people evacuating coming down from Magalia. So we lived at the top of Paradise. And so we just sat and waited and waited and waited for somebody to let us through. We finally got through, and we were just like inching, barely even moving. I got stuck in like a little windstorm. There were pine needles and pine cones and all these things, and my car was moving and kind of shaking. Anyway, long story short, we headed out. My husband and I were next to each other, had the speakers on our phone so we could communicate. He was directing me to try to get in front of other cars whenever I could get an opportunity to get out. It took us 2 hours to go what normally would took us less than 10 minutes to get to where we were going to pick up his mom. And when we got there, the road was blocked, so they wouldn't let us go get her. And at that point, they had my husband go one direction, me go another direction. And so we were separated, and we lost all contact. Excuse me if I get emotional. So from there, we went on. It took me another 2.5 hours. So it took me 4.5 to 4 hours and 45 minutes to go what normally took me 20 minutes because we were just inching down the road. At one point, I was on a road and they were only one lane was open and nobody was coming up the other side. I was going downhill and then the uphill, there was nobody. And I thought, you know what, I need to get out. So I just drove and I went into the other lane in the opposite direction and went for a few miles and then got back in. When I finally got down to Chico, I sat at Rayleigh's parking lot kind of in a daze. I finally heard from my husband and they sent him to Oroville, so he couldn't even go to Chico. And it took him 5.5 hours to get there. We had a friend that was working in Oroville, so he went to see that friend. They actually lived in Paradise too, so they ended up staying at a friend of a friend's that night, and I stayed at the daughter of a friend's house in Chico. So we weren't even together that night. That's really it as far as evacuating. One thing, my husband did have to jump out of his car. He was on another road. It wasn't moving. Flames started coming up. He had to get out and run. And then he was told to get back in the car, that they were going to open another lane. So they did. And so he was able to get out.
Pretty amazing, Joanne. Yeah, we appreciate you sharing the story, and we're glad both you and your husband made it through to tell that story.
Oh, thank you.
As I hear you talk, there's some recurring themes that I'm hearing. You know, both you and Matt had referenced. Well, you had referenced that you heard from a friend initially about the event. Matt had referenced that the 85-year-old living on his block by the Lobo fire. And, you know, that I think that to me just, again, necessitates the message that came out from some of our communities, like the Washington Hill community. And then I'm forgetting the name of it, the community downtown, just outside of downtown Nevada City, that have their own early warning systems, buddy systems. You know, FRS, those handheld walkie-talkies that you can get at Radio Shack or REI. So again, having that network in place where you're not reliant on cell towers, you know, you're not reliant on the county, that you have your own emergency warning system is really important. One thing I heard you guys did really well is that you had all your important papers ready to go. Again, unfortunately, because past experience in previous evacs. And then pictures of your medical scripts and the bottles of meds, so that you know there's things that can be replaced in other cities, in Oroville and Chico, and making sure that you have what you need to make that happen. I took that away from your story as a huge plus. When you and I spoke on the phone, you had mentioned that, like, even though you, like, every major insurance carrier had a annex in Chico and Oroville and even here in Grass Valley to cut checks, but you had made a statement that you weren't in the mood to shop after what you'd been through. Like, you don't want to go shopping for new clothes.
You don't.
Right? You want comfort.
I mean, you're just devastated. You're walking around like a zombie. You're in a daze, and so I did not have it to go back, which is, I mean, definitely something that I would do differently, is have a bag packed. And actually we do now. We do have bags packed.
That's great. And in previous conversations with Matt, I know he had shared a similar story that, you know, just didn't have enough clothes to get through the next few days. So when you're displaced from your home, you want comfort, you want your books, you want your clothing, you want your toiletries, you want some semblance of normalcy. And if you're familiar with any kind of crisis intervention and some methods to, you know, comfort people, it's providing some continuity, even if it's just like waking up in your own jammies, even if it is in a FEMA trailer or on your friend's couch. So again, as you all continue to refine your own go bags, learn those lessons from Matt and Joanne, and maybe throw a couple extra pairs of your own clothing in there that would
Another
work
thing,
for you.
I kind of went back and looked at my text messages from that morning, and people checking in on me later once I got to Chico. And one thing I kept telling people is that I had a terrible headache and I was starving. So I was in the car for almost 5 hours and there was smoke. I had no water. I mean, it would have been good to have like a granola bar or, you know, just something, or maybe some aspirin sitting next to me. But I had nothing, and you're breathing smoke too. You know, even though you're in a car and your windows are up, it's all around you. So, you know, having some water and something to eat would have been good.
Yeah, good stuff. And then, you know, Joanne, you and I spoke about this, and you know, for the rest of the group, I mean, no offense to this, but the idea of taking multiple cars. We all have different vehicles. We all want our own stuff, as I just described about the little things. We definitely want our big things. But we repeatedly hear from individuals of every fire, whether it be Lake Wildwood, whether it be, you know, this one up in, well, the one that Joanne just described, Camp Fire. I'm fearful for Lake Almanor in the peninsula there, if you're familiar with that geography and what might be going on as we speak up at the Dixie fire, that the roads are clogged. And the reality is many subdivisions, neighborhoods, and communities were not built for evacuation. They were roads built eons ago. I door knocked during the Lake Wildwood mock evacuations, their practice evacuations, and we were just asking people as part of the search and rescue evac team, what's your plan? And the single worst answer I heard was, well, we have a great plan. Putting the golf cart in the middle of the fairway because I know it won't burn there. So that's priority number one. I'm getting a Lexus. The wife's driving the Caddy, and we would never ever normally do this, but the neighborhood kid knows exactly where to find the keys to the Range Rover because we want to get that out. And follow-up question to me was, what are you doing, you know, Mr. Official, about the congestion on the roads? And, you know, the politicians have to be a little less blunt than I am. Leave your effing cars behind. It's that simple. Pile the family into one car, maybe grab the neighbors too. Again, there's some convenience later of having all your vehicles, and no one likes to make insurance claims. But it's a lot easier to leave a car behind than it is to build extra roads. And the reality is we can't rely on our municipalities to widen every road everywhere before the next fire season. So, and you know, the main reason is to relieve congestion, but you heard Joanne's story that her and her husband actually got split up and they were bumper to bumper leaving, right? They got to a controlled point and had to split up and weren't able to spend that first night together, which is unfortunate. So again, please give some thought to what you can do to make things safer out there for your neighbors and everyone else. So Joanne, thanks so much for
thank you for having me.
We appreciate you being here with us. Our fourth and final speaker here, I'm excited to hear from Dr. Colleen Milligan. If I said it's good to see you and good to have you, but at the same time I don't miss you at all, would that be okay?
Yeah, that's fair.
Good. So you have some stuff to share with us personally, but you also have some stuff to share professionally. So could you maybe justify that comment so everyone doesn't think I'm a complete jerk and that I don't miss spending time with you?
Sure. I'll start by saying, obviously, Joanne, I'm a member, I live in Butte County, and I live in an extremely fire-prone area. I was evacuated for the Camp Fire. We thankfully kept our house in it, but we were also issued evacuation warnings for the Bear Fire last year, and the Dixie Fire started right on our doorstep because we live right at the base of the Feather River Canyon. So it hasn't been a very lucky string of years. And so I have certainly evacuation experiences from the Camp Fire in particular, but professionally, I was introduced as Dr. Colleen Milligan I am a forensic anthropologist employed at Chico State, but I am co-director of the Human Identification Lab at Chico State. And if you've never heard of it before, my team's jobs are to recover and analyze human remains for law enforcement. We are also the primary victim recovery team for the state of California for wildfires. So for most of the fatal fires, especially in recent years in the state of California, it's my team that collects the victims and finds them. So I have both personal experience with being an evacuee, and I have professional experience with knowing patterns in fatalities in wildfires. Is that a good enough introduction?
Thanks so much. So could you start by telling us maybe just a little bit, a couple takeaways from your personal story? I know you and I spent some windshield time together driving around Butte County on an awful task that you call your day job. But you shared with me a little bit about your story of evacuation and some of the, some of your takeaways. Would you mind putting those out to the crowd first before maybe we get into some of your professional learnings from the Bear Fire?
Sure. I don't live actually for the Camp Fire, for that evacuation. I don't live in Paradise, Magalia, or Concow. Those are the primary communities that were affected by that. I live instead at the base of them. And so for evacuation purposes, unlike those in those communities where because of trees and where you are, it's really hard to actually see the actual fire from that event right off the bat. You know something's happening, you can see the smoke, you can see the discoloration of the sky. From my vantage point, we got to see the whole start of the fire from 6:30 a.m. on to when it jumped the Feather River Canyon from Concow to Paradise. And it was at that point in time that me, as a professional, knew it was time to move, because the Feather River Canyon is actually a pretty good fire break. Most of the time, it's a pretty wide canyon and it's got a significant river that goes through it. And so when the fire has the ability to jump that with speed, and then as soon as it moves on to the Paradise Ridge, one of the things to think about, and that I knew as a professional and was unprepared for as an evacuee, is that by the time you think you might be in danger from the fire, fires are living, moving things, which means that for all of the time that you spend from that point on to thinking, I should maybe move or I should go, the fire is still moving at pace. And so you lose a lot of time in between those time periods. And for all of my knowledge of how fires go, it took me almost an hour to actually leave my house that morning. And in doing so, I realized that even when we had to-go bags, I spent a lot of time running around the house trying to figure out what we would be, if I was missing anything, any important papers. And then we had put a lot of our stuff into bins, large plastic bins, that would be easy to, we thought, put in a vehicle to leave. Unfortunately, my husband was at work, and what we didn't account for is the fact that I would have to move all of that stuff by myself out of the house, and it's heavy and it's a lot of stuff. And so I lost time because of, I was solo in the house. And though you can't see it from Zoom, I'm not a very big person, about 5'2" and 110 pounds. It's probably TMI. But keeping in mind that that means that a lot of the really heavy stuff, we couldn't actually get out of our house. And so as evacuation preparedness goes, one of the things that I know we took away from that experience was we had to do dry runs to make sure I could evacuate our house solo with everything that we absolutely needed, that I could operate things if I needed like garage doors by myself, that I could make sure that I could essentially get everything needed out of the way. And as I evacuated, because of what I knew about the fire and how fast it was moving in the campfire, one of the things that I had to do is I had to go down my road, and I had a whole bunch of neighbors that were standing in their driveways at that point in time. And I had to encourage my neighborhood to go, because of where we live, the danger wasn't as apparent as it might be in some other locations. And so one of the takeaways there is that from the time that I left my house and I started telling my neighbors they had to go, and they did, and they thanked me later for it. to the point where we were actually on the road and evacuating. We ended up being caught for 3 hours in evacuating traffic like everybody else, but we also ended up being caught on the edges of the burn scar as it came down because of sort of the extra time thinking that you have and you don't in these instances overall. One of the things that was, I guess, maybe unique on my end is as I'm evacuating, because of the speed at which the fire moved and because of the behavior of it, I knew professionally this was going to be a fire that my team was going to get called out for. And so part of my time evacuating was also starting the process of talking with Butte County about what resources we were going to need on the fatality recovery side. And that starts almost immediately. I can say for something like the Dixie fire, we've been monitoring it for days without necessarily thinking that we're going to be deployed to it until you get to something like today, where there's an immediate evacuation order for a larger population area like Lake Almanor and Chester. And because of that comes quickly, suddenly. I can tell you that while we started this meeting, my team put all our gear ready to go in the lab, because of those are warning signs to us that when you suddenly have fire behavior picking up, that's more of a danger to the communities around, even if they didn't necessarily feel like they were as immediately in danger beforehand. So I think my main takeaway with evacuating is you have less time than you think for kind of every step of the way.
That's great. Thanks so much for sharing. You spoke a little bit about the topography of your area. We heard it also from Matt. Could you just spend a couple seconds and share a little bit about like understanding the topography of where you live? Because Nevada County looks like Butte County in a lot of ways.
Yeah, so obviously we have, you mean like describe what the like what the topography looks like? Well,
who should be a little bit more alert?
Got it. Okay, yeah, and I'm going to say right off the bat, I am happy to answer questions later, especially if anybody has them. I realize that professionally, I don't have the most pleasant job, and my topic is not the best because I see sort of the worst end of wildfires in that I'm solely on the fatality side. But when we think about topography, and especially as we saw through, if I use the Camp Fire as an example, for counties especially that have rural areas, but also canyons and ridge lines and a lot of forestation, particularly pine forestation, because of we are looking at, or we are engaged in simply the recovery of fatalities from wildfires, and we have been for more than a decade, there starts to be a lot of patterns that we see in where victims end up and a lot of the fires. And I can say from research that we have put together and we will be publishing within the year, that part of what we see for patterning is that, especially when you think about where houses are located, houses that are located on roads that have like one point of egress or exit to them, and exit onto roads that have one point of egress or exit to them. We tend to see more victims on single access or limited access roads than we do on multiple egress point roads. And I think that's important to understand. Even if your road is only, let's say, a half-mile long, getting out, and especially if there's traffic, but getting out in time is going to be compounded. And when you're in a fire itself, especially when you have more limited access or exits to where you are, Joanne mentioned that Paradise was black, like it was night. And there's a lot of smoke that's disorienting, but that smoke also means that it's harder to breathe. There's less oxygen available. And so as you evacuate from areas that are a little harder to exit from. One of the things that becomes incapacitating is the fact that you get essentially stuck in a longer time period in environments that are not as easy as it would be if it was clear to navigate. Your headlights on your cars won't even work fantastically. They'll be pretty dark and hard to see. And then also it's hard to breathe. All of those decisions become much harder to have or to make. And so when we do see fatalities with people that have already left their residence, a lot of times it's because of car accidents. They can't see the road adequately or accurately. We also tend to see individuals sometimes who had chosen to stay and instead realize that they're in danger, and then either can't access a car or try to flee on foot or four-wheelers, and then end up in environments where probably they're incredibly disoriented with smoke in particular, and that becomes a danger as well. And then when we think about other patterns.
Sorry, Colleen.
Go. Yeah.
Sorry to cut in. I want to make sure we're clear. Is the message to not leave or to just leave as soon as possible?
My message is going to be just leave. That's
Okay.
going to be my primary message is leave.
Okay.
And leave as soon as you think there's danger. Like I said, the less exits you have from your road, the longer those roads are, the more danger you're under. If you're on top of ridges, that also tends to be a compiling factor. I'm sure the firefighters in the audience have a better descriptor than I would on this, but fire moves faster uphill. And so as you are thinking of leaving, if you are uphill, if you're on ridges, that tends to be a compounding factor. And then the length of time that you decide to stay at your house is the third and final kind of compounding factor that I'll put out there. When we see some of the variables that go into fatalities on the fires, it's individuals who paused in fleeing that also tend to be in the most danger.
Got it. Thank you. Would like to take a couple questions here if possible, but do you have, and is there anything else that you would like to share, Colleen?
Simply that I think if by the very fact that if you're attending this, you're probably already cognizant of being mindful of the dangers that wildfires pose, but keeping in mind too that from a professional standpoint, for everyone that is working on evacuations, on trying to fight the fire, or even on the aftermath, like recovery teams, there's a lot of danger that goes to their jobs as well. And so part of heeding warnings to leave when you're leaving helps them out tremendously. Because of it's less things to have to worry about in an already pretty stressful environment.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And if I could add in a brief addendum, that would be use your evacuation tags. So the more houses that law enforcement and evacuation resources can just drive by and know are evacuated, the more other houses they can get to alert and evacuate. So Colleen, thanks so much. You know, things I heard in there, once again, it was a local warning. You had warned your neighbors, just like we heard from previous speakers. And then a unique thing that you had to do everything by yourself, including load those heavy boxes. So make sure that you know, all of our to-go bags and such are one-person jobs. And then you, Matt and Joanne all referenced powers out, being able to open a garage or gate. Big lesson there. I know there was a anecdotal story from Lake Wildwood. There was a court during the evacuation during Lobo fire, and there was one person on the whole court who happened to know how to open garage doors, and they had to run around and open them for about a dozen neighbors to save the day there. So thanks for that messaging. We've got a couple minutes left. I don't want to go too late. I want to be respectful of everyone's time, but does anyone have any questions for any of our speakers tonight? I believe they're all still with us. Steering committee, public, anyone?
I don't have questions, but I just want to thank them. Those were great stories. I think that everybody can learn something from.
Yeah, if we don't have any questions, then I will just echo that and thank our speakers. So Joanne, Susan, Matt, and Colleen, thanks so much for your stories. I think it's one thing when we hear it from the officials, but this is, we are independent out here in NorCal, in the state of Jefferson. Some people do have a natural distress. So to hear that from those of you who have lived through it hits a different way, and we appreciate you all opening up and sharing some of those lessons. Again, not to be the downer guy, but I also have to point out the counterfactual and the fact that Professor Dr. Milligan here, has a full-time job doing recoveries. And the counterfactual are the couple hundred people who are not able to join us tonight that have not survived these various fires, these high fatality events in, Bear Fire and in Butte County, a Camp Fire. So we bring this to you to make it safer. And so my challenge to everyone, because we have still, 100 of you here, is instead of sitting back and, listening and saying, yeah, we've heard this message all before, but now that you've heard it right from the people who have survived, the challenge is, what are you going to do about it? So how are you refining your process? What are you doing to make that next code red call out or the knock on your door from your neighbor a little less anxiety driven for you, so that you're prepared and absolutely ready to roll? And if you feel like you are dialed in and everything you heard today was just nothing more than a review, then again, you've now got those QR codes, I hope, on your phone. So go spread the message, share it within your communities, tell your neighbors, tell your friends, and your loved ones here in NorCal. So with that, I thank you all for your time. Next meeting, we have Tuesday, September 7th, same time, 5:30 p.m. That will be our annual Firewise Community Education event. I'm super stoked. Susan Rogers is leading that. It's basically going to be the best of. So we've been recording these meetings. We've been, gathering information. You're going to hear kind of the best of over these last few years to share those best practices. So Susan?
I was going to say, we had hoped that the September meeting would be an opportunity to be back live in person again, with a hybrid sort of meeting at Nevada County Media, where they can have a space for people to be on site, and those would be the Firewise community representatives like we used to have before the pandemic, and then other community members could tune in on Zoom. I'm thinking that although the steering committee hasn't talked about it yet, given what's happened with the spiking COVID numbers, my guess is we're going to be all online on Zoom again, but just keep your eyes and ears open, and we'll hope for the best.
Thanks, Susan. Yeah, we'll stay tuned for that. But regardless, that will be the time and date. So whether it's
Right.
another Zoom or we actually get to see each other again, it'll be happening, and Susan's going to lead the way. So with that, thanks again to all our speakers and everyone else for attending and making our community safer. Some of us will be hanging out afterwards to answer questions, but this is the end of the formal meeting. So thanks and have a great night.